Welcome into another edition of the Cory Sanders Show, everybody. I'm your host, yours truly, coming to you live 7:30 Eastern on a Saturday night. A beautiful Saturday night, actually, here in East Tennessee for a change. And I mean that there's no rain and it's not too hot. And I just actually had a cigar for about an hour and a half before this happened. So I'm primed and ready to go. A fun show in store for you today. We're going to be talking some Shedeur Sanders going off in the preseason for the Cleveland Browns. We're going to be talking about some Cincinnati Bengals and some bit of painful deja vu despite their offense firing on all cylinders in their preseason game against the Eagles. And of course, we're going to get into a fun topic that I've really been looking forward to, my top 5 games I've ever witnessed or covered during my days as a sports reporter. I'll look back at some of my favorite moments, and then of course we'll get into some fun topics at the end. But welcome into another edition of the show. This one brought to you by the Knoxville Ice Bears Foundation, one of the show's newest sponsors. As you can see, I'm rocking them a gift courtesy of Miss Mariah Stills right here. One of the show's newest sponsors. Obviously, was blessed enough to interview Brody Feather a few weeks back. Learn how to ice skate a little bit. Hopefully, I'll just keep going there on every once in a while. Ice chalet over there in West Knoxville and getting a little better. I don't know how. It's probably going to take a little while, but honestly, I was surprised I only ate shit once. That was the funniest part of it, was that I only did it once, and it was on my knees, not on my ass. So that was a good. But brought to you by the Knoxville Ice Bears Foundation, champions for those in need in East Tennessee through the power of hockey. And we're going to get into the show right now. First topic we're going to get into, well, I guess I shouldn't really dive right into it because, oh, man, football is among us. And I could not be more excited. Less than a month from now, the season starts. Well, at least the first Sunday. Season starts less than a month from now, period. But less than a month from now, Ravens going into the Bills on a Sunday night opening game. Going to see if we can get a little payback. As Rashad Bateman said on First Things First, you always love to get your lick back. But first topic of the show we're going to get into is Browns quarterback Shedeur Sanders shines against Carolina in the preseason. Do we have a QB1 in Cleveland maybe on the horizon after being shelved as QB4 for much of the offseason? Shedeur, to his credit, fighting through an injury at least, was as advertised in college against the Panthers. I mean, if you look at his numbers right here, just let me pull those up real quick, even on the stat sheet. Because if you look at the numbers, Shedeur is 14 to 23, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, only took 2 sacks, passer rating of 106.8. Obviously, Snoop Huntley comes in and completes 6 of 8 passes after him, but he was as advertised and even threw up the watch. Obviously not right there, but he was as advertised. I think our memories kind of gotten a little bit clouded regarding Shedeur just because of how far he fell in the draft, which was unfortunate. I mean, was I sold on him as a first-round prospect? Not entirely, but to fall to the 4th round, I mean, you have your owner of your team come out and say, we're not surprised by anything Jimmy Haslam says here in Knoxville, but it says, he wasn't my pick. It was the GM's job. It was the GM's pick. I mean, that's all you need to say. But Shedeur was a great college quarterback, particularly for where he played. Now, did he deserve to have his jersey retired maybe one day or whatever it was after he declared for the NFL draft? No. But at the same time, when you look at the Cleveland's roster, I mean, your competition is Dylan Gabriel. We've seen how he's looked so far in training camp. You bring in Snoop Huntley, who's a journeyman backup. I have 5 quarterbacks on the roster, only something Cleveland would do. You have a 40-year-old Joe Flacco who I'm not convinced is going to be playing after this year. I mean, he's been collecting a check for I don't know how long, ever since he lost his starting job with the Ravens. He had that one little great run in Cleveland, I'll say. I won't go as far as to say fluky, although some of you may be getting what I'm hitting at. And then you have Kenny Pickett. Where's the competition? If Shedeur is as good as advertised, which he was the other night, then this should be no competition. We should be seeing Shedeur start week 1. Am I right? Or am I wrong? I mean, it was preseason competition. The only team I knew that played starters on both sides of the ball for multiple drives in the first preseason game was their interstate rival Cincinnati, which we'll get into them here in just a minute. But Shedeur as QB1 in Cleveland, it's looking more and more possible than right now than it did a few months ago. When he fell in the draft so much, and given how much he talked at camp, or not at camp, during the combine and whatnot. I mean, I love the confidence. Deion Sanders' son, you can tell by the way he talks and the way he carries himself, but it just rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, a lot of old heads especially, and that's one of the reasons why he fell so far in the draft. Come post game the other night, though, I'm trying to think of the words for it. You saw a different side of him that you didn't always see before. Wasn't no throwing his teammates under the bus. I mean, they won 30-10. There's no really way to throw your teammates under the bus at that point. He was humble, gracious. He's acting like a first-round quarterback, how you expect a first-round quarterback to act. I mean, look at Cam Ward in Tennessee. He's already calling out his offensive unit. And he's only been there less than 4 or 5 months. You love that. Even as a diehard Ravens fan, I mean, would it be nice to see? Yes, because of the 5 quarterbacks on the roster, he has the most upside for sure. Kenny Pickett, we know who he is. Joe Flacco, we know who he is. Dylan Gabriel, still can't believe they took him before Shedeur, but that's neither here nor there. And Snoop Huntley, we know he's just a journeyman backup. We know his role has been defined since he was with the Ravens. He can start for you. Maybe he can win you a game or two, but ultimately he's not good enough to get you over the hump at the end. But Shedeur Sanders, this QB1 in Cleveland, is looking more and more possible, and I would not be surprised if that happens. He's got more intangibles than Dylan Gabriel. He's got more intangibles than Kenny Pickett. I mean, Joe Flacco, you can argue here or there, but he's 40. He's going to be on the couch soon. And he's probably going to be forced to because his body's going to start breaking down and betraying him. And then Snoop Huntley's just not a starter. If you bring Snoop Huntley on your team to start, then you must be pretty desperate. And that's even as bad and as dumb as the Cleveland Browns organization is. That's not why they brought him in. That's not why they brought him in whatsoever. But for some reason, the Ohio teams just have inept organizations that just continue to make you laugh year after year after year after year after year. I mean, and we're about to get into the Bengals, who so many delusional fans think this is their year, which I think we're in for some tough deja vu, and I think a lot of Cincinnati fans that aren't seeing the writing on the wall, those of you that are going to be in for a rude awakening, because this defense, we're going to get into it right now. Trouble brewing in Cincinnati. Is it going to be the same old song and dance for this Cincinnati Bengals team? For the past 2 years, they missed the postseason. Granted, the year before, Joe Burrow, not healthy to finish. But they started off 0-2. They started off 0-2 again last year. And then last year, their defense was dog water and couldn't stop a cold. I mean, had they had a semblance of a defense, who knows if the Ravens beat them in either game. And I think the Ravens were a better team. And that's not me just saying that being a biased Ravens fan. But no, I won't even get into that. But Cincinnati's offense was as advertised. They go right down the field, the starters score. Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase. That connection is as alive as ever. Perhaps the best receiver. It is the best quarterback receiver duo in all of football. But then, I mean, you're going against second and third string defenders on the Eagles. Cincinnati's the only team that played its starters for a significant chunk of time. And that's because Zach Taylor thinks that, I guess, playing in the first preseason game is going to make it to where they don't start 0-2. It could help. But Zach Taylor's not a great coach. So can you really, really trust this philosophy? What happens, knock on wood, heaven forbid, you get an injury? They haven't been the most durable team the past few years. Chase has. T. Higgins misses time. He's probably the best wide receiver 2 in all of football, but he misses time. And then they still haven't gotten the Trey Hendrickson situation resolved. And Shamar Stewart is a raw prospect, and 2 players are not going to save a defense that has no secondary and no. I mean, now that Jermaine Pratt's gone, I mean, what linebackers do they really have? And Trey Hendrickson's not good against the run. He's just he's more of a one-dimensional pass rusher. He's not the all-around talent that Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, and Max Crosby are, despite Max Crosby's age. But since Cincinnati, you are at the mercy of the cheapest organization in all of football, and that's been the Bengals' mantra for years. That's why Carson Palmer left. It's why those teams really couldn't, aside from ineptitude when it mattered most. It's why you didn't really keep a lot of stars in Cincinnati. It's why a lot of stars don't go to Cincinnati as free agents, because the Brown family won't pay up. I saw an updated I saw an updated graphic the other day ranking the wealthiest ownership groups from every team down. The Bengals weren't even listed on that because the Brown family isn't even worth $1 billion. It's a mom and pop shop. They make players pay for Gatorade. They make players pay for equipment. They don't give them 3 meals a day. Up until recently, they're in Southwest Ohio. They didn't have an indoor practice facility. They stole taxpayer dollars from the people in Hamilton County in the early 2000s to get that stadium built. Then it was Paul Brown Stadium. Now it's Paycor Stadium. And then you had the Bengals group, part of the ownership group, or at least part of the organization, saying, "Oh, we'll leave if you all don't sign us and pay us to stay at this stadium. We'll gladly leave. We see our worth elsewhere." And then they come out with this statement. This is, "Oh, we're so grateful for the people of Hamilton County." Yeah, because they paid up again and saved your sorry asses. But unfortunately, I just don't see it. I just see the same old song and dance. They have no defense. They have no defensive backs to speak of that are noteworthy. Trey Hendrickson very well could possibly not come back, given the fact that TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, and Max Crosby just got paid, and he's looking at that like, "Oh, I had 17 and a half sacks each of the last 2 seasons. Pay up." And he's 30, 31, one of the two. So this is probably going to be his last big payday, and I can't blame him for wanting his money. He should want his money. But I don't know. Who knows? Joe Burrow's done a great job at playing player advocate GM this offseason, going on all those ESPN shows at the Super Bowl week and putting pressure on the Bengals. That was orchestrated. He did not just do that because he so happened to be in town for the Super Bowl. And that was smart on his part and his team's part. But at the end of the day, Cincinnati is at the mercy of its ownership group, and they don't have a great coaching staff. Zach Taylor is going to be on the hot seat if they start off bad again this year. And to be quite frank, if Zach Taylor didn't have all that talent, he wouldn't be a head coach, in my opinion, right now. I haven't been given no reason to see why. I mean, it's inexcusable that a roster that talented, even with the bad defense last year, but especially years prior, they had a solid defense. Starts off 0-2 multiple years in a row, or that slow all the time. Come mid-season, they're always floating around 500. And this is a team that's, because they're living off of, it's finally starting to die down a little bit. They're living off that long ago Super Bowl run. Oh, this team it's young, it's up and coming, it's hungry, it's here to stay. And then the Brown family strikes again. Seen it far too often. And it's not going to change. It's not going to change if Mike Brown retires and hands it off to his children or the next of kin. It's not going to change until they sell the team. And as a Ravens fan, I love that they haven't. It works well for every other AFC North opponent except the Browns, because the Browns are a dumpster fire. The Browns are such a dumpster fire that they make Cincinnati look somewhat competent. Somewhat. You can't go too far. And, okay, so we have our only comment right now. SRT Outlaw asks, "Are you fresh?" I don't even have to answer that question. I'll sip my tea or my Fresca. But let's get to the fun stuff, because I've complained too much about the 2 Ohio teams that I cannot stand already enough on this show. Being that it's in the dog days of summer, and we've got training camp, we got preseason football. I'm ready for the real games. Fall camp here is in full swing here in Knoxville for the Vols. Got some minor league baseball. But as many of you know, my background started off in traditional sports media. I wanted to be the next Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith, heaven forbid now. But back in 2012-13, they were the template for everyone who wanted to just be an analyst on ESPN. They didn't realize that you had to go through the years of being a journalist, whether that's print, radio, or television, local television, and you had to work your way up for a long time. None of those guys were exactly spring chickens. And that's what Skip and Stephen A did, because I studied their careers from a young age, from like 14, 15. I knew I wasn't good enough to play at the next level in anything. And I knew that I'd love to be able to be paid to talk about it and to stay around it. And that was my ultimate motivation when I actually went to UT and never spent a single weekend after I got in January 2017 until I graduated, not covering a game for some media outlet, whether that be through internships or student media. Eventually getting that job with Sports Illustrated. Got to cover and witness a lot of good games. Unfortunately, some of them I didn't get to actually cover, but I witnessed them. And we're going to go over my top 5. Let me know in the comments if you agree with them. Let me know what some of your best games you've ever witnessed should be. And we're going to get into the list right now, though. Number 5, this will be kind of somewhat... Hey, to Tennessee fans, this won't be a surprise. I actually did get to cover this game. Tennessee, Kentucky in the 2019 SEC tournament. A lot of people think that was the SEC championship game. No, it was actually the semifinal. Tennessee actually got walloped by Auburn in the championship game that year, but that was before they made their run to the Final Four, obviously. But I remember this game specifically because Tennessee and Kentucky split in the regular season as usual. I covered both of those games. Rupp Arena, Kentucky was lights out from the outside. Tennessee returned the favor in Knoxville a few weeks later. And then here's the inevitable third matchup between the second and third seeds in the SEC that year, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. And lo and behold, Kentucky fans traveled very well to Nashville, but Tennessee fans traveled well too. But I remember because it was always physical when those two teams got together. College basketball, I mean, give or take on whether how good it is, how great of a product it is to watch, this game was. And I remember this because with about 2:50 to go in the game, and I was sitting in press row, actually, Blake Von Hagen and I were in Nashville. We stayed there at his family's house, actually, to cover that tournament for the Daily Beacon. He was a sports editor, and I was the men's basketball beat writer and had been for a number of years. And Tennessee had been lights out that season. I mean, they spent 5 weeks atop the AP poll. And then come the SEC tournament, I mean, it was the year before they had made the championship game, lost to Kentucky. So it was time to exact a little payback. A lot of Tennessee fans were looking for that. And they got that, but it wasn't for not being a nail biter. Tennessee was down like 8. Tennessee was down 8 with 2:50 to go. And lo and behold, next you have it. Admiral Schofield hits a 3. Grant Williams gets a spinning and one down low. Grant Williams hits a 3 to take the lead. And next thing you know, with less than a minute to go, Tennessee's ahead, and the momentum of the game is completely shifted. And I actually had more than half, I believe 3/4 of a story typed up about Tennessee losing, and I had to delete the entire thing. Luckily, I mean, thankfully, it was that side. Unlike a few weeks later in the NCAA tournament against Purdue in the Sweet 16. And then obviously back and forth in the last minute, PJ Washington gets a follow to put Kentucky back on top. Less than 30 seconds to go, and this brought deja vu for Tennessee fans too. Admiral Schofield gets the ball in the left wing right in front of us. Takes a couple of dribbles into the middle of the floor near the free throw line and kicks it out. And for some reason, despite him being the Kentucky killer while he was at Tennessee, John Calipari's team left Lamonte Turner wide open at the top of the key. And I had deja vu from covering the game the year prior in Rupp Arena when Lamonte Turner hit the clutch go-ahead 3 with less than a minute to go. And he did it again. Go down. PJ Washington missed the layup. Tennessee gets the rebound. They get fouled, and they seal it at the free throw line. But that moment made me think that was Tennessee's year. They didn't even win the conference championship, obviously, the most Tennessee thing to happen. But it was by far, it could have quite possibly been the best game that I was ever blessed to cover. And I got to cover a lot of SEC football games, a lot of SEC basketball games, a lot of really good ones, a lot of really great crowds. But that one stands above the rest just because of how I told Blake, I think multiple times, I was like, dude, this is over. I mean, of course, I was objective. We were taught to be that way at the Daily Beacon, straight down the line. You get kicked out of the press box in Tennessee if you're not objective, if you don't work for the team. And yeah, I was a bit pissed off. I was hiding it pretty well, but I was pissed off. Fuck Kentucky, to be completely honest. And lo and behold, here come the Vols. And the rest is history. Not great history, but the rest is history. All right. Moving on to number 4. This is a game that I didn't get to cover. Again, I was far too young, but I still remember it to this day. Maybe I'm a bit biased and I know I'll get some flack from Ravens fans on this. Some of them will probably agree, but number 4 is Super Bowl 47. Am I a little bit biased because I'm a Ravens fan? Yes. A lot of people be like, why don't you have the Mile High Miracle game? That was a far better game. Yeah, it was, but unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to witness it. I was actually at work at Food City in my first job, and I didn't have a cell phone at the time, so I had to go to the work phone because I was a nervous wreck, every 10, 15 minutes calling for updates. I didn't even know the Mile High Miracle happened because when I called, my mom said they were kicking a field goal to tie the game, and I was like, wait, how can they tie the game with a field goal if she didn't know she knew an extra point was. She didn't know what it was called, but I didn't know until after I got home and it was in overtime. But by that time, the game was practically over, even though I did get to see the Peyton Manning interception and the game-winning field goal. But Super Bowl 47 stands out because, I mean, as a Heat fan, I'd seen my team go to NBA Finals, win championships. But when the Ravens went to their first Super Bowl, I was too young to remember. And I didn't even watch football at the time. So this is a first. And getting to the Super Bowl, in my opinion, is a lot harder than getting to the NBA Finals because you need so many different moving parts on the field to go right. So many different contributing factors. And they all have to align. You got to be playing at your best. You got to be executing in big moments, and you need a little luck on your side to make it to the Super Bowl. The year prior, it looked like the Ravens were bound for the Super Bowl, and then Lee Evans dropped a game-winning touchdown pass that was right in his hands, and Billy Cundiff sailed field goal wide left from 32 yards out. And with how old Ray Lewis and Ed Reed were after that game, maybe you thought, that was our best chance, and we didn't get it done. Flacco outplayed Brady, and they still didn't get it done. Had some unfortunate, luck, or I guess lack of execution. But the next year was magical. And getting to the Super Bowl and getting to see that patch on your team's jersey for the first time, and just the quality of a Super Bowl broadcast, because usually in every finals or every championship stage, especially with football and basketball, you see what the next year the broadcast is going to look like practically. And it's just a higher quality, different graphics, better graphics. I mean, it was like that in the NBA for years. It was just awesome. And then the Ravens were kicking the 49ers' ass for a vast majority of this game. That was fun to watch. A lot of great moments. Joe Flacco threw 3 touchdowns in the first half. Ed Reed came back to New Orleans, his hometown, got a pick, and it turned out, later to find out he was actually playing on 2 jacked up knees in that Super Bowl, but got the pick on Kaepernick, which actually was the first interception ever thrown in a Super Bowl by a San Francisco quarterback. I guess that happens when you have Steve Young and Joe Montana compared to Colin Kaepernick. But you go into halftime, great halftime show with Beyonce. Queen Bee always seems to have something to do with this, though, because they come out. Jacoby Jones runs the first kickoff back for a touchdown. It's 28-6. He does the Ray Lewis dance, and then 49ers have the ball, but Kaepernick had just gotten sacked. It was 3rd and 13, I believe, or longer. And they were about to punt because they did end up punting. And honestly, if then the lights go out. This is where I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but when it comes to this game, I have a hard time believing that somehow happened when it never happened at a Super Bowl before, dating back to the 70s, 60s even. That valuable of a company, at the time it was Mercedes-Benz that owned the Superdome, that valuable of a stadium, that valuable of an event. It's the biggest event in American sports aside from the Masters. And the lights go out, really? And then you blame it on Beyonce. And then, of course, everyone with a brainstem knew I was 14, I believe, at the time, maybe 15, and I knew that this wasn't going to benefit the Ravens. They were older. The 49ers were younger. They needed a restart, a refresh. Because I think if the lights don't go out, the Ravens drive down, it's 35-6, and it's game over with. Then they coast the rest of the way, but it turned it into a spectacular finish, a nail-biting finish. San Francisco rattled off 14 quick points. Flacco and Anquan Boldin had some pretty big connections to stave off the momentum. A couple of field goals late. Anquan had the big 3rd-and-1 catch with I believe it was Chris Culliver's arm jammed right in there. Obviously an iconic moment because it was 3rd-and-1 and Flacco checked off of the run. Big plays by the defense, even though they were reeling, they were bend but don't break at that point because San Francisco was on fire. And I was just sitting there watching that lead dwindle away. Like, really, we're about to coast to a Super Bowl, to a title, and now we have to deal with this shit. I was mentally preparing myself for calling this the biggest all-time sports robbery ever. I was mentally preparing myself, especially on that final. Again, granted, had the 49ers scored there, I think at least you hold them without a 2-point conversion. I think the offense was capable of driving down to get a game-winning field goal. But it's only fitting that Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, on their final defensive stand together, get it done and hold off what would have been, the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. But Penix is 10 times better. I don't even know why even entertain that comment. But for Super Bowl 47, I remember the feeling of relief when they didn't get that first down. Man, I miss those days. Hopefully the Ravens can get me back to a Super Bowl again soon. But we're going to go number 3. And this will surprise some of you, but I firmly believe this is one of the best back and forth games I've ever watched. Tennessee, Alabama, 2022. Tennessee's perhaps its most potent offense ever. If it ain't at the top, it's damn near it. Heisman leading candidate for Heisman at the time, Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt. They didn't even have Cedric Tillman in this game. Going up against Alabama. It was the first time. I remember the lead up to that game because it was the first time in 15 plus years that you're like, Tennessee really could win this game. I remember leading up up until a day or two before game time, or before game day, obviously, that, a lot of the talk was Bryce Young going to play. And I think the first take debate was because they brought Paul Feinbaum on, who I actually know fairly well. And yeah, everyone's like, oh, will they win with that? Hell no. And then they're like starting to think, I don't know if they're going to win it with him or without him. Because they were at Tennessee. And that stadium was packed and louder than Neyland Stadium is loud, but this was a different level loud. Everyone could feel the onslaught, the avalanche that was coming, and it came early and came heated. Tennessee was up 28-10 at one point during this game, I believe. And then it became an instant shootout because you knew, even with an 18-point lead, Nick Saban's, he's the greatest college coach of all time for a reason. You knew something was going to happen. They were at least going to make it manageable. This isn't going to be a blowout. Alabama under Nick Saban just does not get blown out. It just doesn't happen. And they clawed their way back, and at one point they were up 35-34, and that's when the shootout started. Finds Jalen Hyatt, breaks free for the touchdown. That was actually one of the most iconic play. Well, the fourth quarter touchdown, I should say. It was back and forth, and then the fourth quarter came, and Jalen Hyatt breaks free. Jalen Hyatt scored 5 touchdowns that game, 210 yards. Hendon Hooker threw for 5 touchdowns, was fantastic in the clutch. It looked like they were fumbling the game away, too, at one point, because I believe it was a fumble return for a touchdown, and Alabama was in front. And they still battled back. Jalen Hyatt's 5th touchdown tied the game. Got a little help because Alabama committed a pass interference on 4th down when they actually intercepted the ball. but it was clear it was way early. So Alabama fans will complain about just about anything, and they were damn sure in my mentions complaining about that day. And then Alabama, it's 1st and 10 from just a little outside the 30, I believe. Alabama has the ball in Tennessee territory because Tennessee's defense that year was hit or miss. It wasn't great. That's why they ended up missing the playoff after getting 63 laid on them by Spencer Rattler and the Gamecocks. But 1st and 10, and Nick Saban throws the ball 3 straight times. And granted, you're giving the ball to Bryce Young. He threw for over 400 yards, I believe, that day. And he's one of the best he was one of the best field generals in college football. But all you have to do is run out. Tennessee hardly will have any timeout. You run the ball, you get a few more yards. Will Reichert had the leg to hit it. He just wasn't hitting it in Knoxville. But you 3 straight incompletions. He has to kick a 50-plus yard field goal. Sails right. What was it? 17 seconds or so left in the game. In 2 plays, Hendon Hooker hits Ramel Keaton to the midfield, then hits Brew McCoy in that famous shot down into field goal range. And obviously, with 2 seconds left, they call timeout, and Chase McGrath, the rest is history. 52-49. 52-49. More than 100 points scored combined. And it was back and forth, high-powered offenses. You had some turnover plays. You had the coaching. Nick Saban loses his mind on the sideline. You had Josh Heupel losing his mind on the sideline. Tennessee fans were loud and in it. And for a second, I got to be honest with you, I thought that field goal was going to be too short. It was a knuckler. It was spinning the wrong way. It did just over the upright. And now Chase McGrath will never have to pay for another piece of food in Knoxville when he goes out to eat. And Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyatt are immortalized as that duo. It was honestly, that's been the best Tennessee team, even despite them making the playoffs this past season. That was the best Tennessee team since the early 2000s, possibly the late 90s, when they were competing for national championships. But that's number 3. Like I said, that's one of the best football games, if pure high-scoring shootouts that I've ever watched, and it's hard to top it. But number 2, a lot of people probably won't be surprised at this one. Game 7 of the 2016 NBA Finals. Everyone recognizes that picture. The block by James. What else do you need to say? Cavs were down 3-1 against the 73-9 Golden State Warriors, the greatest regular season team of all time to that point. Cleveland got stomped in games 1 and 2 in Golden State. Won game 3, lost game 4. Come back in game 5. LeBron scores 41. Kyrie scores 41. They come back. LeBron drops another 41-point masterpiece in game 6. Kyrie was terrific in that throughout the entire series, really, but especially in games 4 through 7. LeBron, perhaps the greatest 3-game stretch any player's ever had. And here it comes down to game 7 in Oracle. All Golden State has to do to, have it mean a thing, because they got the ring. Shout out the Chicago Bulls. Is win 1 of 2 games at home, where they hadn't lost back-to-back games in over a year, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. And LeBron said, nah, not this time. And in his defining moment, his defining game of his career, well, to an extent, it was defined by defensive play. Granted, he did not hit the shot. Kyrie did, but that, Steph Curry was hampered and he wasn't the greatest defender anyway. You let your shot creating point guard have that shot. And Cleveland ended a 52-year drought. The city that, other than that, has been cursed when it comes to winning championships. They hadn't won one since 1962 or 63. And that wasn't even a Super Bowl at the time. It was an NFL championship. It was with Jim Brown. We remember the back-to-back losses in the AFC Championship game in 86 and 87, the drive. Then the next year you have the fumble. Got to the NBA Finals in 2007, got swept by a much better team. LeBron leaves in 2010. Couldn't really blame him. Then he comes back after that scathing letter from Dan Gilbert and the treatment by Cleveland fans and delivers perhaps one of the greatest titles in sports history. just because of the significance of the moment and what it meant and how they had to overcome it, being the first team to come back from a 3-1 deficit in the NBA Finals to win the championship on the opposing team's home floor, win 2 out of the last 3 games on Golden State's home floor. It makes Steph Curry look like a back-to-back MVP, first unanimous ever. Made him look mortal in that fourth quarter. It was just a surreal moment. I remember watching the end of the game. I had to call my family because they weren't watching it, including my brother, who's perhaps watching this, claiming to be the biggest LeBron fan. Had to tell them Cleveland's up 3 with less than a minute to go. You got to turn it on. He, of course, says I'm lying, but I remember. I have a pretty damn good memory. As good as a game as that was, as good of a series as that was, greatest NBA Finals of all time, in my opinion. My number one game, and those who know me, this is going to be no surprise. Game 6 of the 2013 NBA Finals. As you all know, Big 3 Heat in year 3, third straight NBA Finals appearance. Down 3-2 going back to South Beach. All you had to do is win 2 on your home floor and you're repeat champions, but there was a veteran-led team in the Spurs with young Kawhi Leonard, very young Kawhi Leonard, one of the greatest coaches of all time, experienced bunch, and Tim Duncan turning back the clocks in Game 6. The Heat were on their heels. I remember leading into that game because I remember the post-Game 5 press conference after they had gone down 3-2. I had some optimism given the fact that they had been there before, and they seemed LeBron especially seemed a lot calmer. But through the first 3 quarters of that game, he seemed a lot calmer in their response where they said, I'm paraphrasing, but the fact, in part, we'll see if we were a better team than we were in 2011. And they were, in my opinion. But D-Wade was hampered. Who knew what was going to happen? He actually didn't play well in Game 6 at all. Thankfully, he rebounded in Game 7. The rest is history. But Heat, down by 10 going into the fourth quarter of this game. The Spurs took control in the third quarter, much like Dallas took control of the third quarter in Game 6 in 2011. And it seemed like I've used the word deja vu a lot this show, but damn it, that was deja vu. I saw it. I felt that same feeling in the pit of my stomach, that emptiness, if you know what I mean. If you're a truly diehard sports fan, you know what I mean. Particularly when you're younger and you don't really have much to keep you occupied other than school and sports, really. I remember that empty feeling. And then Heat start the fourth quarter, red hot, powered by LeBron. D-Wade was on the bench. It was LeBron, Mario Chalmers, Mike Miller, Shane Battier, and I believe I don't remember if it was Ray Allen or not, but come roaring back. Spurs kept them at arm's length there for a few, but the Heat come roaring back and take the lead. LeBron was fantastic in that fourth quarter. He put to bed a lot of haters for the first 11 and a half minutes of that fourth quarter. And Heat are up 3 with roughly a minute and a half to play. Tony Parker hits this crazy step back 3 to tie the game. Mario Chalmers turns it over. Parker gets the steal, comes in, hits a floater in the lane, and the Spurs are up by 2 all of a sudden. You're like, wait, what the hell just happened? All the momentum was going Miami's way. It seemed like the script was written. LeBron's finally performing well in the fourth quarter of a big do or die NBA Finals game. It was do or die. The Heat were on the brink of elimination. Then all of a sudden the Spurs are up 2 and LeBron turns the ball over. I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know if the ball slipped out of his hands, but he had an unforced turnover. Manu Ginobili goes down, hits 2 free throws, and then he comes down and turns the ball over again. I was in utter disbelief, and I could not. Thankfully, Manu went and missed 1 of 2, or hit 1 of 2, but with 21 seconds left, the Heat were down by 5. Mathematical probability of the Spurs winning the championship, I don't need a percentage because they had the yellow ropes out and the trophy was ready to come onto the court. I remember the looks on I remember how I felt because I thought it was over. Who comes back from 5 down with 21 seconds to go? You need a lot to go your way. And the statistical probability of that is not. A lot of Heat fans left the building, tried to get back in, which is funny. Morons. But then LeBron misses a 3 badly. Danny Green doesn't block out Mike Miller because he's running down the other way to get a cherry-picking layup or dunk to be like the crowning moment of San Antonio's championship season, but Mike Miller tracks down the offensive rebound, finds LeBron, and he hits the three to cut it to 2 with about 18 seconds to go. Might have been a little less. Yeah, actually, I believe it was a little less. And Kawhi Leonard is fouled. At that time, that's who you wanted. You did, even though Manu had just went 1 of 2. You don't bet on Manu going 1 of 2 again in that situation. You don't want Tony Parker having it. You want Kawhi Leonard at that time, or because of his youth, or a Tim Duncan maybe just because he's not the greatest free throw shooter, even though greatest power forward ever. I would have bet on him hitting both. Kawhi goes 1 of 2, and Eric Spoelstra doesn't call timeout. Mario Chalmers brings the ball up the far side of the court. You knew just from the motion of the action once they crossed midcourt that LeBron was going to come and shoot the 3. I didn't want him to. I wanted him to attack the basket just because there was plenty of time remaining, but got a good look at it. Misses it off the long rim. It clanked. Went high in the air. Tim Duncan was not in the game at the time. Craig Popovich is forever getting that. Chris Bosh bolts up and tracks down the offensive rebound, knocks Manu to the floor just because of the height difference, and he wanted it more. Little soft kick into the corner to Ray Allen, who somehow, some way got his feet behind the line, didn't step out of bounds, relied on muscle memory because he'd practiced that probably millions of times. Rips the cord in the clutchest shot in NBA history. The greatest clutch shot in NBA history. Saved the Heat season. And I think Skip Bayless overstates this point. Did it in a way it got LeBron off the hook a little, but they still closed the deal, and he was the only reason they were in that position. So I think that's a double-edged sword of an argument when you start to say, oh man, he almost cost him the game, yeah, but he's the reason they were even in the game. Wade struggled up to that point. When they brought him in, they kind of struggled offensively because he wasn't having his best game. Chris Bosh, didn't have the biggest offensive numbers. He made big plays. I mean, the block on Tony Parker in overtime. But, to recap, the Heat go on to win in overtime. Chris Bosh makes a couple of huge defensive plays. LeBron hits the floater. Ray Allen seals it at the free throw line. And a questionable drive to the basket of a Ginobili who looked like he may have gotten fouled, but I'll take it. Ray Allen hits 2 free throws, and the Heat hold on to win. Chris Bosh takes a little bit of a risk getting so close, but I mean, he had talked a bunch of junk about Danny Green in the media leading up to that point, so it seemed fitting. And then LeBron has one of the greatest Game 7s in NBA history the next couple days later. Hit 5 threes, scored 37 points, grabbed 12 rebounds, and hit the clutch shot over Kawhi Leonard to seal the championship. And if it wasn't for that fateful Game 6, I remember because I was sitting downstairs with my brother Cody, and I might as well call him my other brother Jerry. And we all three, I don't know how we didn't wake the whole damn house up. We all three, when that shot ripped the net, screamed bang so loud that I didn't know I literally did not hear how Mike Breen had said it. I could not hear anything. It was like everything else was tuned out, but us three jumping up, screaming bang. To this day, I asked my parents how we didn't wake them up. I don't know. I don't know how we didn't wake my papa up. But what a moment. That was the most exhilarated I'd ever felt after a win, aside from the Ravens-Broncos game, even though I didn't get to watch most of it, which is why it's not on this list. Trust me, I wanted to put it on this list. It's an honorable mention. We'll honorable mention the Mile High Miracle, courtesy of Joe Flacco and the late Jacoby Jones. May he rest in peace. But let me know what your guys' top 5 is. If you feel like commenting below, please do. I didn't mention at the beginning, but subscribe to the channel. Click that bell button to get alerts when I drop my daily live content. Well, I shouldn't say daily. My bi-daily live content. And to close, I mean, now that I guess I should say I got into my top games that I witnessed, figured I'd talk about some of my most memorable interviews as a reporter, or I guess let's say memorable moments. I'm planning on doing a whole episode where I reflect on my time as a reporter and show you guys some of the videos that I have in store. But memorable moments. I mean, I remember my first game ever covering UT football game. I was shooting it on the sidelines as a videographer for the Volunteer Channel, TVC. Our sports show at the time was called Sports Mecca. And, I showed enough in intuition or initiative, I should say, to get us credentialed regularly, even though I was also obviously still doing this writing at the Daily Beacon. That was a memorable moment. First road game. I believe that was the Pruitt era. It was at Auburn. I remember they went in and beat the then ranked Auburn Tigers when they were an unranked squad, obviously. 2018 SEC Media Days. My dad actually, I went there for the Volunteer Channel as well. My dad took me there, and we went and stayed at the Media Hotel, the Hyatt. Man, was that an experience. My dad and I actually had our first beer together at downtown Atlanta, and that's a memory I will always cherish. That, obviously has something to do with it, but I got to interview Nick Saban. That was exhilarating for the first time, getting to do that. First game at Kentucky, getting to interview John Calipari. That was awesome. Roy Williams when North Carolina came to Tennessee that year. Watching Allen Houston come up and, talk at Tennessee after so many years, do a press conference before a basketball game, talking about how they honored his dad, Wade. Obviously, I wanted to ask him about the old New York Knicks Miami Heat days, but obviously I wasn't there to do that, and it had nothing to do with the topic at hand, so I refrained from doing that. I also remember, this is a memorable moment, but for a different reason, Butch Jones. This is 2017, leading up to the Georgia game, which Tennessee lost 41-0, which was my first game, actually, I ever shot on the sidelines. But at the press conference that week, he called the media out for the drama surrounding Tennessee. I remember it to this day. I'm sitting there and he's like, this place with the drama. He's like, these are kids. And I think we all have children. And he's trying to play the sympathy dad card because at that point he knew he had lost the favor of the fan base, and actually had inside sources that played for the team that told me he trashed them in almost every practice. The quote was actually that he's like, no, these fans don't know what they fucking want. But just goes on this tirade, this place, the drama, because Jimmy Himes, WNML, as everyone remembers him, the famous Jimmy Himes in Knoxville. Just asked point blank. Shy Tuttle had a Shy Tuttle who played for Tennessee at the time, had a photo posted on social media. I believe it was Twitter then, now X, of a black eye, and it was clear as day that it was caused by a fist. And Butch comes out and it says that he fell on a helmet. I played football for many years, and not in one practice, not one spring, not scrimmage. Nothing had never ever seen a player trip and fall and hit their eye socket on a helmet. And that's what he said happened. This is a college football coach at a Power 5 school. And this is what he's saying to us. Saying that the media is responsible for all the drama when he just couldn't live up to expectations. The expectations that he set on himself with that, and the ridiculous brick by brick and champions of life motto. Oh, man. This was the epitome of Butch Jones's demise at Tennessee, because at that point he's just like, yeah, enough is enough. That was the last thing he said before he walked off the podium. He said, "Go Vols," I believe, even though he, like I said, he'd said that publicly, but behind closed doors, he didn't feel that way. He only felt that way because he was making $4 million. But other memorable moments, it had the NCAA tournament losses. Those weren't memorable for the right reasons, because you never, when you're in a locker room with college kids, and some of them, it's their last time they'll ever wear the uniform. And, at that time, there was no NIL. You weren't making a shit ton of money like you are now as a college athlete, a really good one. And some of them knew they weren't going pro. So you knew this is the last time that they would really, truly play competitive basketball at that level. You maybe try to go overseas with the G League, but it's just not the same. A national stage, on the NCAA tournament. And that wasn't memorable for the right reasons, but it was memorable. Getting to interview D Wade. That was, and sitting and, talking to Eric Spoelstra and getting to do one-on-one with Josh Richardson at the time when he played for the Heat. That was, I remember when D Wade, I always had a goal when I was a reporter, and when I thought that was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, be a traditional journalist. I wanted to interview Kobe, LeBron, and D Wade, my big three from, my time as a young basketball fan. D Wade announced it was his last season. I was like, how am I going to I'm not going to be able to get credentialed for an NBA game working at the Tennessee Daily Beacon. We weren't in an NBA city. Luckily, I thought in my mind, wait, Josh Richardson went to UT. UT's basketball has always been, they were on the national stage really for the first true time because they were atop the AP poll for 5 straight weeks. Why not? I pitched a story of doing a story on Josh Richardson because he was on the come up at the time. It looked like he was going to develop into either a potential star role player or, something along that lines, an effective shooting guard. Great on defense, was shooting the three at a high level, and why not? How did your time in Tennessee shape you to get into such a demanding organization like the Heat? And my editor said go for it. I got in touch through Tom Satkoviak with Michael Lissack, I believe his name was, with the Heat, and gave me credentials for their March 6th shoot around in Charlotte. Went down there, was on an NBA court for the first time, like standing on the court. Got to do group session with Spoelstra. Obviously, couldn't get one-on-one with D Wade, but I got to I always tell the story. He told me if I wanted to go up and say hi, not say hi, but he said, we're about to do group with Dwayne. He's over there. If you want to measly on over there. And I took that as a chance to talk to my idol off the record. And then I asked 2 questions. I thought I'd be completely nervous, and I felt like it was the biggest moment of my career, so I had to shine. And I did well. I still have the videos, which I'll get into later when I reflect on my time as a reporter, but that was awesome. And then doing one-on-one with Jay Rich, just sitting there, us two, just basically chilling. Even though I was fat at the time, I really wish I had taken my fitness seriously but that was before March 1st, 2019, as you see right here. Yeah. And obviously this is a moment that I wasn't on the record because I just so happened to do it. But I remember at that SEC tournament in 2019, Magic Johnson was still the president of the Lakers, and they were there scouting players. He and Rob Pelinka were both there. I didn't see Rob at first, but I'm walking past, and you glance over, and Magic's one of those guys you look at, who he is. If you know anything about sports, Magic Johnson when you see him. And had to go over and say hi, and I did. I got to talk to him for maybe 15, 30 seconds before Rob Pelinka swept him off. They had to go scout players and, do team meetings and stuff. But that was an exhilarating moment as well. I remember being in Nashville for the NFL draft in 2019. 4 of us students got to go do a behind-the-scenes experience with NFL Network with Charles Davis, UT alum, big Vol supporter. That was awesome. Going into the green room, Peter Schrager coming in saying hi. Then Michael Irvin. That was one of the very few times I was starstruck. I remember him from the Cowboys, from the longest yard. That was awesome. And then just getting on the set of 10 Burning Questions with Daniel Jeremiah after they were done. That was great. And just seeing the crowd in Nashville and the setup for the NFL draft. I mean, these are things I never thought I'd get to do, let alone at that young of an age. And my dream was coming true. And I really enjoyed it until I found out that journalism does not pay. And the linear path to networks like ESPN doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't. And I just didn't like getting policed about everything I did outside. Now, granted, was I the most emotionally mature? Probably not. But the industry just wasn't for me, just because I can look professional and I can do my job. And I was very, 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 very much a go-getter. I wasn't afraid of anything in journalism. But ultimately, I wanted to make a better living for myself and be able to do the things that I want to do. And I want to be able to support organizations locally. I want to be able to give back, and I want to be able to make my own content without anyone saying anything about it. And that's why I'm here. It's going to take a long time to get to that level where I want to be, but it's the new thing now. And I'm the sole proprietor, courtesy of Sanning Media, LLC, officially. But last topic we're going to get into for the show today is actually a funny one. Came across this on Twitter. It's actually it was on Facebook. AI, artificial intelligence, Skynet, for some of you conspiracy theorists, predicts the next 10 NFL MVPs. And this, you're going to be surprised at some of these names. 2025, Patrick Mahomes, and no one's surprised at that one. Could I see him winning it this year? Sure. I think it's going to be Lamar, but we'll see what happens. That's realistic. 2026, CJ Stroud. Realistic as well, yes. And you just got to keep on the come up. Can't have some of that. You can't have an even bigger slump this year than you had last year, even though they still made the playoffs. 2027, Caleb Williams. If he is who we thought he was coming out of the draft, maybe. That's not the most ridiculous thing in the world. This one, though, I'm not buying. 2028, you got Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. has not given us any indication of throughout his short time in the NFL that he's going to be an MVP candidate receiver. That would be unprecedented for a receiver to win the MVP, first off, and I don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be the first one to do it. I don't see that happening. But next year, apparently, according to this, Shedeur Sanders is not only going to be playing for the Vikings, but he's going to win the 2029 MVP. I mean, it's in the realm of possibilities if what we saw was not just an anomaly of the preseason. I think he's going to have a tough time in Cleveland, so maybe he'll end up leaving like most do. Who knows? It's more realistic, I think, than Marvin Harrison. As good as Marvin Harrison Jr. is, I just don't see a receiver winning the MVP. 2030, they're going with Arch Manning in New Orleans. Now, Arch Manning in New Orleans would be rather interesting because we all know the Manning family is from the Louisiana area. If Arch Manning lives up to the billing, maybe, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Arch is going to live up to the Peyton and, well, the Eli and Peyton, especially the Peyton, especially his regular season dominance. I don't think Arch is in that discussion. Maybe he comes out and proves me wrong this year. I wouldn't love to see it because Texas is in the SEC right now, but I definitely would eat my crow. But Arch Manning winning MVP in 23, I mean, who knows? The Manning genes run deep, and who knows? Maybe we do have another legend in the making. This one I'm not buying either. It says 2031 that an old, beaten-down Trevor Lawrence is going to win the MVP, and Trevor Lawrence has actually play has teetered the last year or so. I don't see Trevor Lawrence ever being in the MVP discussion, if we're being quite frank, and I think this is absolutely a pipe dream. I don't see it happening. Old Trevor Lawrence winning MVP, Jacksonville would have to be 15 and who knows, 14-3, 15-2. I don't see it happening. Who knows? It's a long ways off. 2031. I shudder to think about how old I'm going to be in that. I have to be 35, 36 in that range. Don't remind me. 2032, we got Malachi Nelson. Malachi Nelson, some of you may not heard of. Maybe. It's hard to sit here and predict this stuff for kids who are in college right now and aren't even really, barring a big breakout season this year, you aren't thinking about their NFL futures yet. Same thing with, I can't even read it. Dylan Raiola. Lord, I give. Yeah, that goes on the gag reel for sure. That was embarrassing. Dylan Raiola, who knows? But this next one is not happening. Nico Iamaleava will not be welcome back in Tennessee, regardless if it's for the Titans or any shape or form from the Vols. And Nico Iamaleava is not going to be an NFL MVP caliber player. I mean, if you watched him last year when it mattered, he was nowhere to be found. He threw, I believe, 9 touchdown passes in SEC play. Tennessee's offense was very good, but it was great, but it could have been even better if he knew how to hit an open receiver down the field. You think he's going to go play with superior talent at UCLA? No. With his brother coming there now too, them vying for the starting spot, that made no sense either, but the Iamaleava family doesn't make any sense, and I'm sorry, but Stinko Iamaleava is not going to be an NFL MVP. That is the most ridiculous one. When I saw that, I died laughing. I think I texted it to my brother as soon as I saw it. And I was like, really? Not even close. Not even close. The day Nico Iamaleava is an NFL MVP is the day that I will be on an NFL roster. And that's not happening. By that time, I'll be too damn old anyway. That's not happening. But let me know in the comments which one of those you thought was the most ridiculous. Let me know in the comments what you thought of my top 5 games. Let me know in the comments what you thought about my time as a reporter, whether it was shitty or whether it was not. And don't forget, subscribe, like the video, please, if you enjoyed it. Comment to boost the algorithm. Like I said, we've got a lot in the works over here that I hopefully should be rolling out at the end of next week. Some announcements, or maybe the week after. But it's only getting into football season, and this is where the real content comes. We're going to be starting a few new segments, more recorded segments, more interview-based segments. We're going to be having guests on, and we're going to be moving forward and trying to brand this thing the best I can and build it the best I can. You might see me switch up my studio setup here a little bit here and there. We'll see, just to play around with what I've got. But overall, the Cory Sanders Show is in a good place. We had an hour today. Thank you all for tuning in, those of you who did. And we'll see you next time. We're going to be adjusting the schedule come football season too, because we will be going live Saturday and Sunday nights to react to games. So we won't do as many shows during the week. But for now, tune in every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Well, Saturday and courtesy this week, I had a little bit of car issues that I had to deal with that are now in the rear view. But tune in next time. It was great seeing you. I'm Cory Sanders, and we'll see you in the next show.